Live again, Sunday, the 13th of April, 2025. This is Resurgence News. We've got a really big load of stories to get through tonight. We're going to talk about Labour's call for digital IDs. Sounds very sinister. We got the NHS looking to dismantle and get rid of waiting lists. What the hell's that all about? Fudging figures again, no doubt. This week, the BBC spent £500,000 on restoring the controversial pedo statue. We find out that speaking English is now a hate crime in some places. And we've got a new segment, which is Idiot of the Week. So without any further ado...
I've got lots of stories with that, yeah. Haven't we all?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us live on this Sunday evening. I'm Martin Costello, joined as ever by my co-host, Debbie Hicks. Good evening, Debbie.
Hi, Martin. Okay, you're okay. Haven't seen you we weren't here last week, were we?
We weren't. No, we had a bit of a rest and trying to.
I was moonlighting. I'm so sorry. I was moonlighting. I went on Shelley Tasker's show last week.
Good old Shelley. Yeah, great lady. We'll have to have her back on sometime.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Phenomenal lady who works very hard in this movement. Yeah, so a lot to cover in our absence over the last few weeks. Now, one of the first stories I really wanted to talk about was I think it's 40 Labour MPs have asked to bring in digital IDs to tackle migration. Let me just get the story up here. So this is the story here. This started off actually as a wet dream by Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister. He spoke about he brought in some ID cards of some form before like digital age. I can't remember what the idea was at the time. But now more recently, we saw in the in 2021, the government tried to roll out track and trace, where they spent £30 billion of our money, which they spaffed up the wall to try and keep an eye out for some form of digital ID. But now this idea has reared its ugly head once again, with no doubt Tony Blair in the background. Now, the latest thing they want to bring in for is for legal immigrants, which is very interesting. The very people they can't seem to stop coming over into our country. So once again, what we kind of seeing is that problem, reaction, solution. But thank God Tony Blair has called upon this as a great way to precisely know who has the right to be here. He suddenly cares after throwing the floodgates open. And sorry if people are eating their dinner, and there's that vermin right there. Now, Debbie, you warned about this actually a couple of years ago, didn't you? Some of these ideas that are coming in. What do you think we can possibly gain by having such a system?
Nothing at all can be gained from having a system. Of course, it's being presented as the solution to people's fears about immigration. I'm not saying all of those fears are not justified, but I think there's been an amplified, full-on campaign to make people really worried about this. I think we've seen that 24/7. So I think there's been a sort of a media campaign, which quite disgustingly, Labour has always, all of them have played the race card with this, in the sense of, we saw it, didn't we, during the election, Martin, how, Keir Starmer even called out some groups as a problem that were not welcome in this country. Labour has played the race card over immigration and used it as part of its electoral battles, if you like, or, I think all the parties have. And of course, now, after sort of egging people on, having this great big wind up, and people are understandably, I understand that, worried about these issues. I think people have been baited, I think, as well. I think a lot of us have been baited into a situation where it's like, well, we need a solution. What can we do? Whereas actually, rather than stepping back and thinking, well, maybe the solution is what they've wanted all along, You know, they've been planning digital ID for a long, long time. I mean, you quite rightly hit the nail on the head when you said during the lockdown, the complete objective. I mean, obviously there was all the stuff on the periphery, which we were all fighting against, you know, the coerced jabs, the restrictions where we couldn't go out and go to work, etc. That was all of it. But the thing at the core was the fact they were going to bring in these so-called health passports, where we were all going to have to use these to go to work, to go shopping, to go to the pub. And of course, there was a big backlash to that, and they had to step back on it because they had it already, as you know, Martin. They had contracts lined up, you know, £1 million going into, I think, billions altogether, actually, what they were going to do for what they called health passports. But they weren't really just health passports. This was digital ID. That's what it was. It was digital ID. They couldn't get it through that way because luckily, and we were all to thank for that, weren't we, when there was a backlash. But now they're trying it in a different way. So, and I have to say, this way is likely to be more successful because I think they're going to have more public opinion behind them. So, you know, and that's why I say to people, doesn't matter what we think. I think it's a separate debate, and we mustn't let emotion come into it. I think the immigration debate needs to be looked at in the cold light of day separately from digital ID, because digital ID is going to be nothing to do with immigration. It's going to be about controlling all of us. It's going to be about controlling what we can buy when we go to the supermarket, whether we can go to the pub and have alcohol, whether we can travel, when we go to work, what we do, whether we can go to the hospital. We're going to talk about that shortly, about all the awful stuff that's happening with our health service and how this is going to link. This digital ID is going to be linked to a kind of a social credit system, programmable money, cashless society, where everything is controlled. And it won't matter then whether we're an immigrant or whoever we are. It is going to be all of us. And it's worrying, isn't it? I mean, what do you think, Martin, about that?
I didn't know about this, but apparently there's an online wallet already that allows people to store these documents on. And of course, now we're hearing that digital driving license is going to be launched. So suddenly, you're kind of coerced into it because you'll probably have to have this in order to drive the car, basically. And of course, here we go. We are committed to using technology to improve lives and transform public services. So again, though, there's the carrot there. They're putting on, you know, it's for your safety. It's those sort of things they're dropping again. They're saying digital identity offers a secure, efficient way for people to prove who they are without physical documents, reducing fraud and saving time. Well, I'm more than happy to keep the old driving license. Why should I be forced to download this to prove who I am? Well, you know, again, though, they're doing it out of your convenience, aren't they? It's the same like with the whole cash campaign, like not using cash out of convenience. It's just that another step forward into that, I suppose, that dystopian future that you've been warning about, Debbie.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to get people to put the pieces together with this because, you know, I think what governments, what politicians, and I think what powerful people and the media, who all work together, they're all part of the same club. You know, we're not in that club, as we keep saying, one big club and we're not in it, is that they're very, very clever on playing with people's fears and emotions. They're much smarter than us as activists. You know, those of us that have been activists, we just think, don't we, rather naively, that we go out there and tell the truth. You know, we go out there and tell the truth, and that's all we need to do, and we're going to convince people. But actually, these people that spend millions of pounds on research into behavioral psychology and all the rest of it, you know, they know how they can manipulate the public. And I think, it'd be interesting to see if there's been any surveys done on what people think about digital ID now that, because obviously no one wanted the health passports, which was the same thing. But how do they now see digital ID now it's been presented differently? What
concerns me is obviously, there's a lot of a growing backlash against all this mass uncontrolled immigration. So they are going to use that as the kingpin to push this through. and there'll be people will be begging for it because they're so concerned about that, but they don't see the bigger picture that actually that mass uncontrolled immigration has been another weapon used to push such things through and have such a system, you know, like they do in places like China, and all the rest of it. So it's all contrived, it's all deliberate, and you've probably got these people again like Sage right in the background, manipulating people's social behaviors to do this. And they'll probably put adverts out like, oh, when you go to the pub or whatever, you can't buy a pint because you ain't got your digital ID. So you're the old fogey's got his old passport or whatever. So you look like the idiot. So they're going to try all these sorts of stunts and tricks. Paul Dodd's got a comment here. If they allow us to put our passports in with them without charge, there may be no more extra costs. John Dolan says, invasion of civil liberties. Yeah, just stop the boats. Which, that's another good point. Jay King, only reason Stein wants this so parasites can vote for him. Probably very, very true. James Burns, no digital ID, very, very much against it. And Alicia Smith, Blair's ambition, everyone's digital, no chances. World Economic Forum agenda. I could not agree more with that. We know they're absolutely behind this. We know they're the greatest threat to our democracy, as Klaus Schwab has openly admitted to infiltrating cabinets around the world. And Matt Steele, that's a great comment about the banks where it's set up for crypto, which is actually, a very good point, because it's at some point, Debbie and I were talking about this for the show, actually, I believe there's a deliberate attempt now to crash the economy, to roll up such things, Matt, with like the crypto future. There's a planned construction with the tariffs and things going on. So something very, very big's coming on. And so at some point they are going to force us into it again. You know, at the moment it's very subtle. But Debbie, do you think will be a big resistance to this, or do you think most of the sheep would go along with it? What do you think? Have they broken the hearts of the people in this country?
Unfortunately, I'd love to say there will be, but I don't think there will be, because I think this time, the way it's been played, I think there's going to be a lot of people that will naively think that, the economy will improve, they'll get jobs back, they'll get housing back, all the issues that we're worried about in this country. They'll think that perhaps if we can control immigration with digital ID, that these things are going to change, but they're not going to change. And because these are political and economic decisions, they're nothing to do with digital ID. Let's think about it logically. How is digital ID going to change that? And how's that going to change immigration if that's what you're concerned? It's not nothing to do with it. It's surveillance, it's control, and it's financial control. That's the only thing, because obviously if you've got programmable money that's digital, if you want to control people, it has to link with that. You can't have cash to do that, can you? So it's it's a great big false flag, I suppose we could use the word. It's a huge false flag. It's a cloak, it's a cover. And I ask people to sit back and think carefully about some of the traps that are being laid by the mass media as well. And we try not to get, dragged into that, because it's I think the most we can do, because they won't bring it all in one great big, as they have been, with that data access bill that I spoke about on here before Christmas, and I went into the committee meeting to watch that in Westminster. I could see from that will be the background legislation, and then, which is what they're talking about, the MPs, and they will add on to it, and it will be done in phases. So that, by 2030 probably, which is the kind of target date, isn't it? It will be all out digital ID. So what I say to people is, if you resist now to this digital ID that's kicking in, you can make it not work. But if you just comply, you can't comply your way out of this. It comes down to things like going on holiday, because there are new controls at the borders now. If you go into Europe, if you go into the European Union, where you've got to give your fingerprints. I'm sure you're aware of this, Martin. And it's just things like that. We've decided, and it's horrible. Of course, we would like to go on holiday. Who wouldn't? It's nice to go away for a holiday. But we've decided we're not going to put ourselves through that. I'm not giving my fingerprints. I'm not a criminal. Although they think exactly. I'm not a criminal. Why should I give my fingerprints at the airport? Yeah. So we've all got to sometimes, I know it's horrible, make sacrifices to say, I don't want this, whether it's going to a different shop that takes your cash rather than, I don't know, Burger King or what is it, these ones that don't take cash, Pret a Manger or whatever. Put your money where your mouth is. So.
No, exactly. Well, I just want to read out two comments, great comments there actually. Ollie Paramore saying they're building houses left, right, and centre, taking up green belt land, build new supermarkets. Digital identity has got nothing to do with immigration, everything to do with the 50-minute cities in control. Excellent point. That 50-minute cities that they're trying to usher in, as we've seen like in Oxford and all over the place. So good job. People like Ollie are on the ball there. James Burns says, unless we stop digital ID, the elites will continue to have their totalitarian and authoritarian depopulation agenda.
Yeah.
UN Agenda 2030. Yeah, Debbie just mentioned that. And the social credit score. Yeah, so you won't be able to go abroad anyway, Debbie, because you won't have enough carbon credits. Having against the narrative, no food, no money. Yeah, so great messages there, people. Keep them coming in. We'll move on to our next story now. This is, I'm just going to share my screen. I've got to do the producing myself. You just can't get the staff, But so I'm going to bring up the next story.
Nice stuff, isn't it? With this money that we get from other countries.
Oh, yeah.
Nice and stuff. But...
Well, of course, that's it. We're obviously not spending on the right things, are we, Debbie? So, but this is a great story you picked out about the hospitals. Now, hospitals to get unlimited incentive payments to take patients off waiting lists. So NHS Trust, now our beloved NHS, have been ordered to validate their entire waiting lists. So they want to find out who's still on there, I suppose, because they've got so ridiculously huge, as you've seen as well firsthand, Debbie. But now these hospitals to receive unlimited incentive payments to remove people staff decided do not need treatments. It has been reported. So, Debbie, why would they suddenly decide this for people? People have been on waiting lists for absolute ages, needing like operations. Suddenly, we're having this audit or something to see who's needs to be on there, and they're getting money for removing people. It seems. What on earth is going on here?
I think in a nutshell, I think there's two things. I think that the main objective is to coerce people into paying privately. This is the end of the NHS, isn't it? A public health service that's free at the point of need. I think it's been so run down to the ground in so many ways for such a long time. I think this is a final assault. And of course, who better to do it than Labour government? Because people think, oh, Labour government's going to save the NHS, which of course, no, it's not. There's been loads of deals done with the United States recently about private companies taking over what's left of the public elements of the NHS. And I think this is the final assault, because what are you going to do if you're desperately waiting for surgery or treatment for something that's, especially if it's life-saving, Martin, and even if it isn't initially life-saving, as we know, like with my problem I've had recently, I've been into hospital, if things are left, they do become urgent and they do become life-saving. And this is the problem, isn't it? What they will do, all these, and we don't know who's going to be making the decisions in this hospital, who's going to be deciding. Is it going to be the surgeons? Is it going to be the consultants? Who is it? There's a cash incentive there that's going to come from the top of the trusts that run the hospitals that are going to say, you need to completely get rid of these people off the list. So these people, if they can't find the money to pay privately, what's going to happen to them, Martin? We know what's going to happen. We're going to see that mortality rate going up even more in this country. More people are going to die. And so I think there's two things. I think it's about coercing people to go private, to pay for private health insurance, to try and get around this. And the other thing is to make the NHS so not work whatsoever that they start bringing in more. They start bringing in charges as well. I can see that. I had a conversation recently in hospital, because I've been in hospital, and I was talking to lots of the staff, and one of the nurses actually said that to me. She said, we know privately from conversations in here that charges are coming very soon. That's what she said to me. So I think it's common knowledge in their world, that this is what's happening. So charges, coercion to pay, and I know it sounds really horrible. I think it's like they're just culling people. I think they want to reduce the population. I think they want to, and I think this could be quite eugenic. Eugenics being like shaping people in desired ways as how you want them, certain characteristics. And I do think there's undesirable people in this, Nazified system, if I can use that word. I know it sounds extreme that we're living in, where, those that they see as, we always use Klaus Schwab, useless eaters, the elderly, those that are poor, those that are very ill or disabled, those people, aren't they, that are going to...
And we know as well, they basically shut down the NHS like for 2 years because of what, and like people weren't getting cancer treatments and all that. And like you mentioned just a moment ago about, when you don't treat someone, it gets worse and worse. So it's going to get it must be really bad out there, really, really bad. And the sad thing is, though, and like you just recently witnessed it yourself, like there's these people that they get into, or there's the surgeons who do the operations. They're only there like 2 or 3 days a week. And then the rest of the week, they're probably out doing private stuff, getting loads and loads of money for it. And we're out playing golf and stuff. And these are the people that get lauded as heroes, I've always said really that the NHS should be like run more and more of a military fashion,
Absolutely. I was quite shocked. I haven't been, that was the first time I've been into hospital recently since I had my son. I've never been ill in my life. I've always been a healthy person. So, I'd heard how bad it was, but until you're in there, you don't realise. And I was absolutely shocked at the way the system works. They're supposed to be emergency surgeon. You'd think, wouldn't you, logically, that if someone comes in and they need an operation like now, they would do it if it's like now. It doesn't work that way. It has to be the day. It has to be the days that they do the surgery on their schedule and on their rotors. And for the surgery that I needed, which was on my gallbladder, at this local hospital, it's Tuesdays and Fridays, wasn't it? Tuesdays and Fridays.
Tuesdays and Fridays.
Surgeons that do this do not work weekends. So what happens if you get somebody that comes in on a weekend that needs a proper qualified surgeon in their area? They might just get a duty surgeon, Martin, or if it's at night, they have junior doctors that are training to be surgeons that cover. So you're not getting the appropriate. See, this honestly, it's just unbelievable what's happening. So, like you said, if you're not there, if you don't decide to die on a Tuesday or a joke a bit, it's mad, or a Friday, then you know.
But the sick part about it, though, is if you got a few quid on you, then you can just go and have it done privately straight away. I mean, what's it coming to when that's the case? I thought, the NHS, all that money getting pumped into it, it's literally, I think it's like literally the third, fourth, or fifth largest employer in the entire world, We're talking, I don't know what the stats are now, but certainly a few years ago, it's like 1.4 million people in this country work for the NHS, which is a huge percentage of people. There's a lot of money going in, but it's clear that it's not going into the right places. We're not the staff, there's, I think 2 in 3 are not even on the front line in the NHS. There's a lot of pen pushers and what have you. When, like I said, it needs to be run more like a military fashion. And we need doctors and surgeons out there on the front line dealing with people straight away.
Well, it used to be, I have to say, I think it used to be that way, Martin, not that long ago. I do think this is quite recent because my husband's had various operations and we go back, 15, 20 years. I remember going in with him, not in this area of the country, it was in the east of the country, Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, that area. And he, it was the way I didn't realise at the time, but I compare it to now. It was nothing like this. It was, as we were saying, there was a system in place, you went in, there were specialist surgeons accessible to you, checking on you with your problem. It wasn't this haphazard, disjointed system where you don't get any proper care or treatment. And it's obviously been the last 20 years, there's been this gradual descent you know, and someone just made a really important comment. I don't know where it's gone. I was sorry, I was just reading it. Sorry, just reading this. When will the people realise that everything is an agenda being rolled out? Puppet masters. Yeah, there was something before about the NHS, but I agree. I think this has been a long-term agenda. This is it here, isn't it? From Matt. They don't need workers in the future. Most people are not healthy. They don't want to help themselves. So what do you do with them? Yeah, what do you think of that comment, Martin?
Well, yes, it's very sobering, to be honest. You know, yeah, Matt goes on to say as well, actually, that the NHS is basically a scam, and that's like, obviously, you break your arm or something. And we saw, I think, they were lauded as heroes, you know, after that. That was the weird thing over that whole period in like 20, you know, the you know what. All suddenly everyone got to worship the NHS, and they brought it up to this level. And of course, you yourself exposed that what was really going on behind the scenes, which was literally nothing. Empty hospitals, all that, and people out clapping, doing nothing. Most of the staff at home. So it's a very, very dangerous entity now, and it's not really. Well, we thank those hard-working staff who are on the front line. There's a lot of wastage there. Contracts going out where they shouldn't do, and of course, you know, and like for medication and stuff like that, which they should all bring in house. And of course, a lot of them, the NHS are paying for a lot of private surgery as well now, and things like that. So you're right, Debbie, when you talk about the way that they are, you know, changing the whole thing. It's such a shame because, you know, this country, when it was in full working order, the NHS, it's the envy of the world. But now it's got so out of control, and it's just a big cash cow. People are ripping off left, right, and centre. Even like for the you know what, there was people like Michelle Mona doing all these PPE contracts and all that, and they were robbing it blind.
Exactly. You know? It's just become, it's just like everything that we talk about on this show every week. It's been corrupted. It's been corrupted. I mean, I can't talk about at present my personal experience, but I could see how it was corrupted at the level that I was at in the hospital on a ward. You know, the corruption is from top to bottom. And the problem is when you have a corrupt institution, people are scared to speak up, and they're scared to do their jobs properly because they're scared at every level that they're going to be prosecuted. And we know that's what happens. Look at what has happened to that Lucy Letby. You know, the evidence is piling up now that that poor girl was innocent. And this is what happens is you have a system that is dog eat dog, and people at the top will make sure, this is what corruption does, isn't it? That the people at the bottom take the blame for malpractice, for negligence, for mistakes, for incompetence, whatever it is, you know. And my husband's got a gentleman that he works with, just lost his mother. She died in another local hospital. I won't say the details, but again, it's a similar thing that we're talking about. It's from the top to the bottom, you know, this system. I think it's people have to speak up. You know, they have to blow the whistle on what's happening. So
no, you're absolutely damn right. And yeah, it might be your job and all that, but you got to be braver than that. You've got to, if you see stuff, you have to call it out, because eventually it won't just affect you, it'll affect your children, your grandchildren, everyone else. That's why you've got to be bold and brave and not scupper to these people. And it goes back to everything, you know. You've got to, you know, to do things against the grain to make changes. If you keep following this path, you just go off to the end of a cliff in the end. Like if you, you know, if you don't use cash and all these different things, it's all connected. You've got to be brave. You know, I always revert back to it. We had people storming the beaches of Normandy for our freedom. It's not much just to ask, just to do things a little bit differently, because you know, if you don't do it yourself, do it with your kids and your grandchildren and future generations, because they're the ones that really, really count there. Now we'll move on to our next story. Again, let me just get this up now. Recently, the wonderful BBC, who they keep sending me letters this colour all the time. I don't know what their game is, but I've literally cancelled my TV license. Oh God! But yeah, every month they send me a nice red letter. I keep thinking it's a Valentine's Day card, but yeah, it's just more.
Secret admirers, Martin, sending you.
Oh, it must be. Gary Lineker, I think it must have been. I think he really admires me funding his wages or not funding his wages, as the case may be. Now, there was an issue here. Let me just, can I get the video up? Oh, yeah, we'll just take a look at this. Now, about, in the lockdown time, the BLM movement was about, and they ripped down a statue in Bristol, a guy called Colston. They ripped down this statue and they dumped it into the water around there. And there was a big hoo-ha. And so the next day, this guy here went and assaulted the statue outside the BBC. Now, this statue, it turns out, was made by an artist called Eric Gill, I think in about the 1920s. And I don't know how you see it. Well, you see it here. You see it probably better in the video clip. But basically, this guy admitted that he's a paedophile. He abused his daughters and even the pet dog, apparently. So there was a massive campaign now to get this statue removed. Now, after this incident in Bristol, the police didn't intervene and they just let it all happen. This chap here went and basically...
He started hacking at it, didn't he? Yeah, I remember.
He started whacking it and he somehow got up there with a ladder.
Yeah.
And he started smashing it. People filmed it, the police around there, not really been able to do a great deal, really.
No.
This is the broadcasting house in London where, I've protested outside there a few times, actually, in the past. Yeah. But, to be fair, he could have done a better job of vandalising.
Isn't it? It's like marble, isn't it? I mean, it's marble anyway.
Oh, I didn't see this before. He actually smashed the child's penis off and all the rest of it because he was so disgusted at what happened. Now, further on from that, not long after, the BLM people that attacked the Colston channel all got let off. So this guy here, suddenly, they couldn't do nothing about it. They had to let him, off.
Oh, he didn't get convicted in the end because they went to court, didn't it?
No.
I remember they went to court
because they knew how much it would kick off if those BLM people got away with like murder. Basically, they had no right to knock that statue down because they even had a vote in Bristol whether to keep it or not. They voted to keep it because like the heritage, but of course people got I suppose washed up in this thing at the time. They were locked down for ages. The George Floyd nonsense, where there was no evidence of any racism come about. We had this movement come out, didn't we? Then, of course, they didn't get convicted, all got overturned, probably from a lefty judge. So they couldn't do nothing about it. Now, this week, just to rub salt into the wounds, the BBC actually spent £500,000 of TV licence payers' money on restoring it. And they put this big thing around it as well, to preserve it so it can't be attacked again, probably bulletproof glass again. I mean, Debbie, do you think once again that the BBC are not really reading the room about these things, rather than taking it down and perhaps putting it somewhere out the way, mothballing it? They've had it repaired and then put a protective thing around it. I mean, and we know the BBC have been in lots of controversy with Jimmy Savile, Gary Gill, all these different people. Do you think that's really going to help their cause going forward?
Well, no, and I was quite, flabbergasted that this was at top of the news, like it was almost being flaunted. Like, look, we've used your money to restore this statue, which is horrific. And I think, to me, is it just me? They're sending a very clear message, actually, about where their priorities are and and also who they're also telling us, I think, who is in charge of the BBC. Is it just me? Who is in charge of the BBC? Do I have to spell it out? I'm sure people watching agree with me. I think this is telling us, because who in their right mind would even publicise it, let alone do it? It's shocking. It really is. And I think we're living in a world now, aren't we? We talked about this before we came on the show, where everything's been flaunted. Horrific stuff that's going on. I'm not saying there's always been horrific stuff, but it's almost like they're just flaunting it now. They're saying, look what we're doing,
and Ollie Paramore actually mentions about Hugh Edwards as well, another one that got in trouble not long ago. guy that was warning us to be careful where we get our information and stuff from. And of course, he got done. But then, of course, he played the old mental health card, and he's just suddenly disappeared, like it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
After what he's done, but this, I just cannot understand why the BBC would spend money on doing something like that. If anything, spend money to take it down, put it somewhere. A lot of people just wanted it grinded, probably like Jimmy Savile's gravestone. But again, though, it just shows, I think, another example of how out of touch they are, and they're quite willing to spend, actually prosecute people for not paying their TV license to fund things like this. Yeah. I mean, it's astonishing, really.
Yeah.
But no. So I just thought I would bring that story up very briefly. Yeah. Now, the next one as well, I've got a video to share. Now, this was an incident that happened recently. Some old chap had a stall out somewhere, and he got accosted by our wonderful police, who was some are claiming that showing signs of different two-tier systems. They call them two-tier care. We've had the police, and this gives me memories, actually, when I was attacked for a two-tier system in Swindon. But it's not just in Swindon, it seemed. It's other places like this. Now, just check this guy out here. He gets accused of basically causing hate crime for saying, please speak English. And this guy is actually partially deaf as well. But just check this out.
You may have filmed some of this interaction with the mayor. No? Because if you do, that would be really handy for us. But apparently during some conversations between yourself, apparently you have alleged, we weren't here, so I don't know you've said it, but you've alleged to say, speak English. Or was that effect?
Speak clearly.
Speak clearly.
No, the gentleman's partially deaf.
Yeah, he can speak clearly.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even hear.
No, and that's fine, and that's why we've just come to speak, because potentially someone could perceive that as a hate crime.
Did we just know this was going to happen?
No,
didn't we?
People, if someone says to me, officer, I believe this, then we need to look at it, because someone's potentially reporting to me a big crime.
We're back. Incredible scenes there. Incredible scenes. So once again, it seems like the police have come wading in on something that weren't really needed. We see an elderly gentleman there getting elected a police officer, for basically trying to incite some hatred.
Yeah.
Do you think, again, though, like people are getting really annoyed about the way the police are behaving because they seem to be treating some groups differently from others? And again, it seemed to me they're picking on some old chap there who, he's not a threat, is he? He's not going to cause alarm and distress or whatever they use now. It just seemed another really weird moment, Stasi moment, I suppose.
Yeah, it's going a little bit far, and I think there are, generational differences in how people speak as well. Don't you think so, Martin? That's all it is sometimes, I think. It doesn't necessarily mean, to class it as a hate crime. I think, actually in terms of the law, I'm pretty sure that's not the case. It wouldn't go anywhere. I think the police were just coming in and being the thought police in that situation, saying you can't say that. Because like I said, I really don't think that would stand up in a court of law. Because, it's... I think it's one of those kind of, like I said, generational ways people talk. If they can't understand something or they don't hear something, can you speak? No. No, that's just ridiculous. I mean, it really is.
We've seen footage recently, though, of actually the police going around and knocking on people's doors for social media posts and all the rest of it, and tweets.
Yeah.
And there was a case recently, a lot of people talking about, a lady called Lucy Connolly. She was locked up after those so-called riots last year, where she said something really disgusting, really, but she did delete it very quickly. But they actually
I did read something. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah,
the calls for it, and it seemed way too much for what she'd actually done. It seemed to be like putting a spike on the head again. But, I don't know if it's just me, but it just does seem that there does seem to be a much harder stance against native people in this country. And it seems like you get away with things.
Well, in the sense that I think I think it's a hard one in the sense. I think sometimes, you know, we hear about these cases and the media push them deliberately to sort of get us all, you know, inflamed about it. But I also do think the police are being policed in ways where they're being told, you know, if you hear someone say that or you hear someone do that, you've got to take them up on it. And you know me, Martin. I'm about bringing all different groups of people together. I'm not about division in any way whatsoever. And I'll just give you an example. You know, and I do think it's because I'm a white woman. I'm just being honest. When I think it was January 2021, I went into Parliament Square, and Boris Johnson had just called another lockdown, and there was supposed to be a gathering, and it didn't turn into a gathering. It just turned into this really heavy police assault on everyone, and everyone kind of just went because it was so horrific. There was a man there from Oxford that I knew, and they were being really heavy-handed towards him in front of his children. And I got quite angry, and I stepped in with another lady, and we were kind of sticking up for him. And they ended up arresting me, and I was taken to Kentish Town Police Station. You know, it was all over the media at the time. I was dragged off by these masked policemen in handcuffs. And at Kentish Town Police Station, I can't remember what it was. I asked for a duty nurse because I'd had handcuffs on for such a long period of time. They were digging in. And when the duty nurse arrived, she did have generally a very thick African accent that I struggled to understand. And I've also, as I said, you've got a bit of a hearing problem. And I turned around and said to her, I said, sorry, can you say that again? When she came into my cell, I said, I can't understand you. I said it very politely. And she said, are you something about being racist? She started at me. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, no, I'm not. I said, I genuinely can't hear you. And that was one of my little experiences where I felt like we've got such a kind of oversensitized culture we're living in, where people feel that, you know, like that lady, she's been made to think that if someone says that, they're being racist. Or I think there is an influenced culture that has been, from every angle, kind of made worse. And sometimes you do feel, don't you, you've got to be oversensitive. I mean, I'll give you another example. I've been in hospital recently, and I have no problems whatsoever. You know, it doesn't make any difference to me if they're qualified and they know what they're doing. It doesn't matter. But there were a lot of nurses that were from various countries, and there was one, and she was very sweet, lady from, it doesn't matter where she's from, actually, that doesn't matter. But anyway, she had a bit of an accent. And again, because hopefully it's going to get better now because I have my surgery and it's all connected, but I couldn't hear what she said. And do you know what I said to her? Because I was very aware of how what could be misunderstood. I said, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. It's not anything else. I genuinely can't hear you. And then she was like, oh, okay. But I had to say it in that way. I had to say, I genuinely can't hear you. It's not anything else. In other words, I'm not being racist. And is it just me? It's made us have to be a bit like that. Like we have to be over at times too, because our actions can be
well, it's because like our cultures are different, aren't they? As well, you know, we're not all the same, but you know, and the way they've divided us, everyone's like on tenterhooks. So because you know that's what they've done though. They've made it so bad. They're making everyone divisive. Instead of like, if you've got like a multicultural country, instead of bringing everyone together, they're still putting people into boxes, and that's what's really, really worrying. You know, rather than having no integration, which is what we should be doing. You know, they're still deliberately showing these things, winding people up, spreading fuel on the fire, deliberately to keep us divided. That's what they've done, and it's the same with all these different minority groups that you see. And, you know, they even go down to sexes and divide you any way possible. And they're doing that there. And that's why people they just don't want to say anything anymore. They're just quiet. And, you know, and you had that experience initially. That was, you know, was a totally harmless thing. You got misconstrued. So then you obviously, you know, were worried about how other people might say in the future. So, you know, then a lot of people think, oh, I was better not to say anything at all. Otherwise you just get accused of all sorts of nasty things, you know?
It's very, everything was very inflamed and very, And then on that matter, I mean, obviously, I've had lots of dealings with the police over my anti-lockdown activism. What I say to people is, unfortunately, you know, just be very aware of how things can be misunderstood. You know, all these, like we said, you know, generational differences in how people talk as well. And I'm very aware that that's a thing. I think it is. I mean, even my mother, who's very, you know, even she will say things in a different way, maybe to someone who's 20. You know, and I think we need to think about all these things and what's the way forward with it. I think the only way forward is to try and talk to the people that are all the different people that we meet, to make them understand as well, because unfortunately the police are just being used, like we talked about, to make it even. I think they're making it even worse. I do.
Well, as Stephen Dalton says, you don't have a clue, mate. Come live in Bradford, man. Talking shy. Wow. Yeah. Actually, Swindon played Bradford yesterday.
What does he mean? Sorry, you don't have a clue, mate. Come and live in Bradford. What does he?
What does he more than welcome to come on, Stephen, if you want to, and you can tell us about your experiences. More than happy.
I'm not quite sure what he means, though. What is it we don't have a clue about? What is it?
Maybe he can enlighten us, and if he wants to come on and talk about it, he's more than welcome to. You know, we're only here talking about our own experiences. We're not saying we know everything.
I think
everyone's different
as well. And again, this sort of been having to be extra sensitive. I mean, anyone that knows me and follows me on social media will know, you know, what my thoughts are on all these sorts of issues. So if anyone's drawing conclusions that I just made the comment that we have got an inflamed culture between different groups, whether that's right or wrong, and I do think powerful people have done that. I'm not blaming the different people at all, as I said. That's why I said to that man, please explain what you mean, because I think you might misunderstand what me and Martin are talking about. But
well, hopefully he can elaborate on that. But that's exactly what's going on, though. There was a bit the C word was being used, but people can read it in the comments. But you know, this is what they're going. Don't fall for it. Don't let them divide us. And you know, because that's what will happen. We know there's a problem with cultures not integrated and all the rest of it. You know, and that's what we've got to be careful of. Now, I'm just really conscious of the time. We've had a great chat tonight, but just to finish it, we've got a new segment now, which is Idiot of the Week. Something I've just picked out, basically, because I saw this video yesterday. Basically, the football was being played, and Plymouth Argyle were playing, Plymouth, who were bottom of the championship, were playing, I think they were top at the time, Sheffield United. So Sheffield United were desperate to win, and of course everyone was expecting them to win, and they didn't. Plymouth won 2-1, much to the delight of the people down there. But check out this behaviour from a Sheffield United fan. It's just absolutely disgusting.
Let's go.
So basically, he's got all upset because his team lost a game of football. And that really stuck out for me, really, because I thought, there he is, travelling all those hundreds of miles down from Sheffield. This kickoff as well, like 12:30. So they all left about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. He drove all the way down to Plymouth, sees his team lose, gets all upset, then causes criminal damage. He goes out his way to do that. And it just what really, you know, I just can't wrap my head around is he's got all that anger to fight for his football team, but there's our country falling to bits. You know, we see it a lot, don't we, Debbie? These sort of people behaviour.
Yeah, as we spoke about before we came on the show, obviously football can be a great unifying thing. I think it can be. And a great thing for people to follow. I know it's very expensive for football fans these days as well. That's another topic. I'll talk about this quote shortly. But what was always concerned me about football, and this is me having a go at football fans, is how it can be a big distraction, I think, from the bigger issues. I wouldn't just say football, I think sport in general. So, we were talking, weren't we, about the Orwell quote. Football, beer, and above all gambling, filled up the horizon of their minds. To keep them in control was not difficult. What do you think about that quote from George Orwell, 1981?
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? I just can't, can't believe such a person actually spoke about these things and so far back. But it's like that image there as well. I think it's great because all these people drinking and watching the TV screen and someone booting them a bag of wine around, which I know it is entertaining for people. Don't get me wrong. It is a break for them. It's like a religion to them. But it's just upsetting that, people don't have the same fight for their country, really. And I think that's what really upsets me most of all about it. There he is getting all upset about a football game when our government is there getting away with all sorts. So it's just occupying the minds, really. It'd be great to have a time when people can enjoy things. So I think in the Romans said it was bread and circuses, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
As long as they're entertained and all that, they're not thinking about the real issues. It's like putting the clowns into the circus. It's the same sort of thing. And it means everything to them. And I just find that really, really sad whilst their country crumbles. Because at some point, there'll be no football for them to watch. That's what they don't get. And it's just really sad. There's a comment here. Oh, yeah, nice one, actually. Yeah, from Ollie again. First time watching, guys. Great to see what others who are awake to the real devastations going on. Ollie, you need to come on. We'd love to have you on the show. You sound a real asset. And we're really pleased that you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
It's people like you that make it. Susan Thomas, idiots just go to cause trouble, sport for true fans and families. Yeah, exactly. That's what it seems to be.
The problem is, we spoke about how the media inflames everything and causes problems. And we were just talking about that just now when we were talking about different groups of people. We always talk about this, but I think football hooliganism and violence, we know it's all come out, hasn't it? Like Hillsborough, what happened? I'm sorry, but we're back to problems with our police again, with how Hillsborough was handled. Often these incidents are so kind of focused on by the media. Like, that was a big thing at the time, wasn't it? In the 80s, football hooliganism was what they call a moral panic. There's a very famous, I quoted him today, actually, on social media, called Stanley Cohen, who did a study called, I think it was called Folk Devils. And he did a case study where he looked at the mods and rockers in this country, and how back in the 60s, the media in this country, the newspapers, used to keep doing all these scare stories saying that the mods and rockers were causing all this chaos around the country in seaside places and upsetting the elderly. And everyone was like, oh, God, we've got to do something about the mods and rockers. And, of course, that kind of moral panic went. And then there was different moral panics. It was the skinheads and the punks.
No, it's the far right.
My sister was a punk. My sister was a punk. She had the spiky hair, bless her, when she was alive. But there's always something, isn't there? There's always a group that's to blame. And I think, it's that, isn't it? I think we've always got a moral panic on our hands to deal with different groups that are the problem. And as you said, human beings, I think that picture really says it all, the one from Orwell, of everyone coming together, watching, you see it in pubs, don't you, when there's a big football match or, I don't know, World Cup's on, everyone comes together. It's that human beings naturally are drawn to crowds and being with their tribe. It's like we've all got that feeling. It's like when you meet people that you know and you're somewhere different, you're drawn to each other. And I think we've all got that in us, and they know how to play that with football to kind of focus us away from coming together against what they're doing. And I think
and that is so true. Another way to divide us is you've got red, Man United or Liverpool, then you've got blue, Chelsea or Man City, then you've got red, Labour, blue, Tory. It's always the same thing, isn't it?
It mirrors each other, absolutely. Psychologically, on a kind of subconscious level, all these messages kind of stay in there, don't they? With people about sides and teams and good guys and bad guys and.
They're only blue, the Chelsea fans, so they're Tory blue, so they'll vote for them. It's just ridiculous. It's just so much psychology involved with this, and that's why people need to snap out of it. Yeah, but no, that's a great.
The lady said just now, it's a shame because a lot of people, just families that want to go and watch the football, and they don't want, don't want any trouble. So
it seems to be coming back again. But shame they just don't put that same energy into fighting for their freedoms and country. So I hope that Sheffield United fan gets charged for that. That was actually pathetic behaviour. Obviously, we didn't see what went on beforehand.
The water spray on, the window cleaner. That's what I would have done.
Yeah. That's one way. Some people
It's
suggest
not very violent, is it? It's not violent. So.
No, exactly. No, exactly. No, fantastic. Well, brilliant show tonight. Yeah, great as ever, Debbie. We'll call it a close there now. Please, people, thank you so much for supporting the page as well. It's growing massively, getting the word out there. That's because of you sharing stuff and liking and commenting and all that. That's what gets it around. So as long as you'll do that, is as long as we'll be out here speaking the truth wherever we can, because that's what we do. We do it to defend your freedoms, don't we, Debbie?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and as we say, you know, any questions you have, or you want to come on and have a discussion with us about anything, just get in touch with us. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody, any perspective, you're welcome to come on and have a chat with us. And you might get a surprise if you talk to us.
Exactly. Anyone you want to come on the show, drop us a line. You're more than welcome to. Absolutely. You're always welcome. Anyway, have a good week, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you at the same time next week. Enjoy the sunshine if we get blue skies.
Okay.
Take care.